Hello and welcome. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to attend this webinar, Vulnerability Management and How to Reduce Risk in 2019. Just a small little bit of housekeeping. I just bring your attention to the webinar dialog box and the questions section. A small tip, just as the questions come to mind, pop them in there and I'll put them to whoever is the most sensible person to address the questions at the end. So for most of you, I think are IT Force customers already, but for those of you who don't know us, we're IT Force is an award-winning managed services company. We've won multiple awards for the quality of our services and our processes, and there's all that information at www.itforce.ie if you want to look into it a little bit more. In terms of perimeter security or vulnerability scanning, IT Force already offers a regular checking and reporting service to clients. We use the Qualys product to check and report on vulnerability scanning and any issues there may be. And we have a small offer to anybody who's attending this webinar. You'll get a chance to participate in a free perimeter security check and a report if you wish to take us up on that offer. So now I'll just hand you over to our own Mark Skelton, and he'll go through the first piece of this, which is the basics of perimeter security and why you should be even considering it. And later we'll have Patrick Taylor from Qualys who'll go into it in more depth, the product itself. So Mark, if you're there, I'll give you the stage. If you can just verify.
I am indeed. Can you hear me there, John?
Perfectly, yes. So
excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And I'll just check. I think I've got control. Yep, that's me. So I'm Mark Skelton, as you can see, that good-looking chap. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for IT Force. I'm just going to talk a little bit in general terms about vulnerabilities and vulnerability management. And in a little while, my friend Patrick from Qualys is going to talk in more detail about their excellent platform for vulnerability management. But before we get into that, I just wanted to maybe just set the scene a little bit and talk about what it is and what it's about. We'll start with basics, I suppose. What is a vulnerability? I mean, it's kind of an obvious thing. It's obviously a weakness of some type, but I guess we all have our vulnerabilities. But in terms of IT security, there's a kind of a dictionary explanation there. It's a weakness which can be exploited to perform unauthorized actions within a computer system. Okay, bit of a mouthful, but you get the idea. So it's not just some theoretical sort of a weakness that, it's not great. It's an actual thing which allows a hacker to do something against you, take control of your computer, get your data, maybe denial a service, knock your computer offline. So they are, clearly they're not good things. They're not something that you want lying around. They're not all vulnerabilities are equal. Some are a lot more severe than others. Some are, so they range from sort of almost informational things that are theoretical that have never been exploited, all the way up to, very, very serious ones which can be easily exploited and have been in the wild. There's all sorts of different types of vulnerabilities. I'm not going to get into the technicalities of classifications. I could be here for an hour doing that, but I suppose just talk for a second about the sources. They come from lots of different places. Just a few of them mentioned there. Software bugs is an obvious one. So you might be running, a web server or something, Apache, and there's a bug in that, and that bug becomes known, and it allows people maybe to, to take control of the web server. Out of date applications and operating systems, that's probably one of the most common sources. So basically, it's really about patching and keeping your systems up to date. Pretty much all operating systems, be it Windows, Unix, they all have vulnerabilities which become known over time. This is why it's important. The vendor in question will go and fix that vulnerability, and it's important then that you get those rolled out. I mentioned there of algorithms. I'm thinking of things like SSLs, versions. If you're using an old version of SSL or a weak cipher or something like that, there can be underlying flaws with the technology which come to light. A good example in recent years would have been the Intel Spectre and Meltdown ones, those are difficult ones because they're just fundamentally in the system, not easy to do anything about them. It could be again an out-of-date operating system or an OS that has problems with it. very often it's down to just a lack of hardening. So you've got a perfectly good system, that should be okay, but it hasn't been properly configured. It hasn't been properly hardened. Simple example there might be just having a weak password. So you may have, a lovely web server up on the internet, but you've left the local admin password blank, which basically gives somebody a very easy way to get into it. So it's not always just about patching. Another example might be hardening, where you just have left, an old version of an SSL cipher available. These are very kind of common sources of vulnerabilities. And the last one is quite common as well. This is where it's unintentional. So you've accidentally usually exposed something. Again, you might have a web server, which obviously you want on the internet, but it might have a separate management portal, and you accidentally publish that, or let, with firewall rules, let that out onto the internet as well. And that's a very common source of having vulnerabilities. And there's lots of other examples. I won't go through them all here. That leads us on, I suppose, to what is vulnerability management. I'll start again with a kind of a dictionary. So I think this is from Wikipedia. Vulnerability management is the cyclical practice of identifying, classifying, prioritizing, remediating, and mitigating system vulnerabilities. Now, try saying that with a few points on you, I guess. The key word there, I think, is cyclical, and that's an important point to get across. People in the world of vulnerability management, there's a lot of phrases that get bandied around, like pen testing and vulnerability scanning and system scanning and security auditing. And I suppose historically people would often go to a third-party company and say, right, come and do my vulnerability, do a vulnerability scan for me, and you'll get a nice report out of it, and that's it. That's okay. That's obviously very important and very good, but that in itself is not vulnerability management, in the same way that one-off updating of your Windows servers is not patch management. It has to be cyclical. It has to be something that's done on a regular basis. Now, how regular, it depends. Certainly, I would say if you're not doing it monthly, you're probably not doing it often enough. And with modern vulnerability management systems, obviously including Qualys, that can be done in almost real time, where the system is constantly scanning your network. It's constantly looking for new vulnerabilities. And as they appear, it can immediately alert on those. So that's where you're getting into true vulnerability management. So why do I need vulnerability management? Well, so I'm just going to take a little sip of water here. Sorry about this. Sorry, I'm a little bit man-flued up here, so hopefully you can still hear me. So why do I need this? I mean, the question kind of answers itself. I mean, nobody wants their systems to be vulnerable. Nobody wants to leave themselves open. There's an important point here, is that the hackers are already doing this for you on your behalf. We're not quite on their behalf. So if you've got an internet-facing system, and if you monitor the firewall logs on it, you will find that on a very regular basis, somebody's going to run a port scan on it, or a more in-depth vulnerability scanning. This is the hackers. This is what they do. This is how they're looking for weaknesses. It's a bit like the person walking down the road, pulling at each car door, to see which one is open before they decide which one to break into. So, I mean, your only way against this is by doing it yourself on your own behalf, or, getting a third party like our good selves to do it for you. And to fix those vulnerabilities. I mean, these are all known vulnerabilities, that they're looking for, but you need to find out about them. You need to prioritize them, and then you need to fix them before the hackers get in. The next point there, some of these are kind of various Gartner statistics. One is that almost half of all data breaches are caused by out-of-date software, and remember, that's just one of the many vulnerabilities out there. Probably most data breaches are in some way caused by a vulnerability which could have been picked up. I mean, the likes of out-of-date, unpatched software, particularly the likes of web servers, that's meat and gravy for vulnerability management. It would pick that up straight away and empower you then to go and get it sorted. Another Gartner one is that enterprises that implement a vulnerability management process will experience 90% fewer successful attacks. The keyword there being successful. You're going to have these attacks. People are constantly doing this, whether you know it or not. But what you don't want is, you don't want them to be successful. There's another important point as well, particularly nowadays with GDPR. This is around compliance. So no system, no matter what, is 100% secure, and nobody is completely immune from being hacked. It doesn't happen. But if you are, heaven forbid, hacked and maybe somebody gets access to personal information off your systems, you can be held legally liable if you haven't made proper steps to secure those systems. So, if you've got a web server or a very old firewall that hasn't been patched in 10 years with poorly, configured firewall rules, you are liable for that. So, you haven't made reasonable efforts to secure the system. Okay. Now, there's quite a few steps in vulnerability management. I don't really want to go into these in great detail. I suppose the key, I'm going to talk about them in a second. I suppose the key point I'm trying to get across here is that it's quite a complicated process. It's certainly not something you can just sit down and do yourself, write a little, batch script or something to run this, or, start looking up all the versions of software you have and checking it against databases to see if there's vulnerabilities. The reality is nowadays you need a piece of software to do that for you. Clearly, we're here to talk about the Qualys solution, and you can maybe get a little idea as to why it's quite complicated here. I mean, you start with a discovery. This is kind of probably what you think of a vulnerability, is that you will run a vulnerability scan against your network. You will identify, first of all, so you're looking to see, well, is there a vulnerability? May a vulnerability exist in the first place? The next minute you get in deeper into that, you need to verify that it actually is there, that it's not just some anomaly of the scan, and you need to classify it. As I say, not all vulnerabilities are equal. You could have something that's very, very serious and really needs to be fixed straight away because it's a known exploit that can be easily used to compromise your network, or it could be really more of a theoretical one that's out there that could potentially, be used, but nobody's ever successfully done it yet. You then need to prioritize. Again, obviously, you're going to prioritize the higher, the more serious ones. But even within that, you may have two systems, one of which, both with the same vulnerability, but one could be a completely unimportant, maybe web server with very little on it. The other could be your payroll system with all your customers' credit card details on it. Clearly you're going to prioritize the ones that have the greatest risk associated with them. Then you're either going to remediate and or mitigate. So remediation is where you basically permanently fix the thing. So you put a software update or patch in place, job done, forget about it until the next scan. Or mitigate. So mitigate is where there's no, in a good example there, maybe there's no patch in place for it. So you have to put in a workaround. Maybe you can reconfigure it in some other way. An extreme example of mitigation is to turn the thing off if the risk is sufficiently large. That's what you may end up doing, actually shutting the system down or locking down access to it from the internet until such a time you're happy that the system is up. So I thought the key point there, there's more to vulnerability management than just those steps, but those are the key parts to it. And bear in mind, this is a rinse and repeat. You don't just do this once and then happy days. As soon as you get to the end, you're starting again. So when you mitigate or remediate, you need to run your discovery again immediately to make sure that you've actually fixed the vulnerability. And as is with platforms like Qualys, this can be pretty much real-time scanning, where it's the whole time looking for vulnerabilities, and as soon as when it finds them, it can alert on them. It can even go so far as to auto remediate in some cases, like roll out a patch, etc., or reconfigure a system. Okay, right. Have I lost control here? Here we go, we're back again, sorry. Now this, thankfully, given that we're about to have a presentation from Patrick, our partner in Qualys, it probably comes as no shock to say that we use Qualys as our preferred partner for vulnerability management services. It would be a bit bad if I said we use somebody else. We don't, we use Qualys. We've been using them for quite a number of years, and we're using them obviously for various reasons. The key one is that it's a very, very good solution. They really are one of the kind of Rolls-Royce branded solutions that are on the market. They're very geared and kind of towards our end of the market. The solution basically speaks for itself. I'm pretty much done. As that was really just a quick whistle-stop tour, just to talk a little bit about what vulnerabilities are, what vulnerability management is. I'm going to hopefully hand over to my good friend Patrick now, who's going to talk in a little bit more detail about the actual Qualys platform. Are you there, Patrick?
I am. Good afternoon, Mark. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly. Just double check. I think I've given you control there. Just make sure you can do your slidey thing.
I'll just do it. I believe I can now. So let me just move that on there. Yep.
Excellent.
And
just
let's
before
get past that one as quickly as possible.
Okay, I'll go. Before I go, I want to give a little shout out for our Kieran, who's our Wizard of Oz behind the curtain here. He's kind of pulling all the levers and stuff and all that. So thanks for that, Kieran. And thank you for your time again. I do appreciate it. And over to you, Patrick. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark, and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for attending this afternoon. I understand how precious your time is, so it's very much appreciated. I'm going to take a few minutes this afternoon just to take you through the basics of the Qualys platform, what it is that we deliver, and how our partnership with IT Force has helped their customer base dramatically over a number of years and through a number of major threats as well. So it's always good to find a nice starting point for this, and one of those is the latest buzzword around digital transformation. So digital transformation is an IT thing. It's about processes, people, and ensuring that these two are connected by technologies interoperating according to latest innovations, such as cloud ops, DevOps, ubiquitous computing, etc. And digital transformation is also changing the IT landscape. It's dissolving perimeters and transforming everything into a heterogeneous computing environment. So security is often a challenge, but it must never be an afterthought, and it should be built in and bolted on. So we need to deepen those thoughts and see what capabilities are required and how we can help. As you can see from this slide from a couple of years ago, the vulnerability management industry is very alive and very, very well. There are a number of players out there. Most of them are the largest service integrators and managed service partnerships, such as IT Force. And Qualys delivers a lot of its functionality via these kind of organizations, largely because, as Mark pointed out earlier on, the resources required to be able to scan your perimeters, scan your internal desktop switches, servers, etc., to remediate against those, to keep aware of future threats as well, can be time consuming, and often it is too difficult for a single entity to do so within an organization. So this is where IT Force becomes paramount to the success of that as well. Qualys enjoys a large market share, as I've said to you earlier, and we've got some wonderful company names on there, and IT Force themselves have worked with a large number of these organizations. So going back to that challenge of how do you build in security into a managed service delivery, it relies on a number of things need to be done. Digital transformation has created an explosion of new technologies and opportunities, but it's left a gaping security hole in its wake. IT pros facing a daily challenge to stay ahead of that chaos, and today's mixed bag of current IT security and compliance tools are, well, they're creating more issues than they actually solve. So with security at a crossroads, how do you succeed in this hyper-connected world where everything is linked to everything? The first thing is to know every device everywhere, in itself a challenge on a day-to-day basis. Secondly, it's know every device's security and compliance posture. That if finding the devices is difficult, then understanding the security and compliance posture of each and every single asset and having information that you can jump to about that can be very, very difficult to achieve. And thirdly, the biggest thing that you need to do is take immediate action from anywhere. And again, this is where you need to have a vendor, a solution, or a third party in place that can keep on top of this for you, that can be proactive. So they need to be able to source the latest exploits, the latest malware. They need to be able to provide you with that information and guidance on how to remediate against the vulnerabilities that they discover for you. So with Qualys, everything is structured to provide the right perspective to the various user audiences when they need it. The Qualys backend intelligence enriches the context, aggregates data at scale, and relies on big data analytics to provide the accurate information. So this is based around customizable dashboards and widgets. User profiling and native multi-tenancy of the platform supports the most diverse use cases as well. So it provides a great tool to local security and IT teams to access the data they need in the format they want. So digital transformation, as I say, with security built in and bolted on, and not bolted on, sorry, requires organizations to build new capabilities such as these 5 that you see here. But these are actually the 5 core promises of Qualys that it strives to maintain to its customers. And so therefore you can be reliant and confident in the fact that IT Force therefore are carrying these same 5 tenets of security. It's having the visibility over your assets at any point in time throughout the global network. It's being able to accurately identify the vulnerabilities based on the operating systems and the market versions of those OSs as well. We need to be able to scale out, and the Qualys platform is deliverable either to a 2-man fruit shop or a 200,000 user global entity. And it gives you the ability to use a variety of scanning sensors to be able to see all of the information that you need. These variety of sensors also give you this immediacy. Qualys offers real-time visibility over the vulnerability status. I'll go into a little bit about that later on, but it's something that Mark picked up on was the cyclical nature that is required within this. So being able to scan on a regular basis or on an ongoing basis means that you can actually just dip in at any point in time and report on the vulnerability status rather than have to keep going out and setting scans for it. The final piece is transparent orchestration, which is really just geared around you as the business owner knowing that this solution that is being used for vulnerability detection is also integrated with a number of other solutions that IT Force might be managing for you, or you might have integrated within your own networks. And so it can take data from other places and normalize that into a format that's good for you to look at as well. We work on a basis of the eyes, the brain, and the arm. So being able to observe, process, and react. Many organizations out there, many vendors out there for vulnerability detection claim to have a fully cloud-based product. And this is something that Qualys has actually been built on since we started business in 1999. We were one of the first pure cloud-based platforms. So we were doing cloud when cloud wasn't cool. So often other vendors have just used that cloud-based solution to deploy virtual appliances in a way that's disjointed from other observational points. However, the Qualys approach and the IT Force approach, therefore, considers a wide variety of sensors to collect the information. So these are sent to the cloud platform, whether that's a private cloud or a public cloud, where they're processed. So our approach is to empower the 3 phases of collecting information from a variety of sensors deployed across the customer environment. Data streamed to the cloud platform and processed, sliced and diced by specialized microservices. So this generates the reaction to enforce security when needed in a controlled yet automated way. Let me just move through. Forgive me, I'm having to click onto this to make sure I can move through for you here. So I mentioned about the eyes, the observation. So it's centrally managed, self-updating, immediate to deploy. So Qualys delivers a free virtual cloud agent in Windows, Mac, Unix, and Linux. And this allows fully authenticated asset inventory. This can be activated as required for modules such as vulnerability management, policy compliance, web application scanning, indication of compromise, or file integrity monitoring. And this agent updates every 4 hours. So it delivers near real-time visibility of the very latest vulnerabilities. Any report that you receive based on the agent, you know that these vulnerabilities were detected within those last 4 hours. It can also be used for passing or failing policy mandate controls such as ISO, NIST, HIPAA, Sarbanes-Oxley, CIS benchmarking as well. And Qualys's newly released passive network sensor detects new network devices. So it proposes them for scanning and acts as a valid alternative to network mapping, which should be done on a regular basis to look for the live hosts on your network. But in itself, it tends to generate a lot of traffic and causes negative impact. The second stage is the brain, so the processing of that data. And Qualys the brain receives data collected from the eyes, if you don't mind me using these terms, using a high-performance streaming backbone. Okay, the backbone dispatches the data to the relevant microservices. And as I said, it's sliced and diced to fit the visualization needs of that user. So we store and index our data using the latest, greatest technologies, such as Cassandra, Elasticsearch, Ceph, etc., if you've heard of any of those. And we have billions of data points indexed in the cloud to keep the 2 seconds immediacy when data is queried. The third, and this is the third area here, I'm referring to the ARM. And so this is around how we actually mitigate and put in those workarounds for future that Mark referred to as the sort of the last stage of the cycle before restarting. So having been able to identify the vulnerabilities and give you the clear English text around how to mitigate these vulnerabilities, what the impact and the threats are to the organization, it's how do you future-proof yourself against those. So whether you are dealing with web applications, Qualys can deliver a firewall that allows you to apply management, so whether it's geolocation, redirection, blocking, etc. We've just released patch management, which integrates fully within the Qualys platform so that you're able to fully scope out the patch jobs around Windows, Unix, Linux, and Mac, as well as any third-party applications as well. So the usual patch tools that are in place currently, probably within your environments, you would need to log into a few different tools to be able to deliver the full patching. So Qualys can actually take all of this into a single scan job. So IT Force, for instance, if they're managing your remediation for you, will be able to scale out and scope the patches. They'll be able to test them. They'll also be able to uninstall them as well. So if a patch is applied in a test environment and you see that it has a negative impact, IT Force has the ability, therefore, to uninstall that and to go back to a previous version. So they can continue to work with you, not really just to make you patch what needs to be patched, but also to work around what shouldn't be patched or cannot be. One of the things that is very important to us on top of the standard vulnerability management is the other areas that we can help out. And as you can see from here, IT Force and Qualys partner uniquely to be able to deliver to their customer base a blend of security solutions. So whether you are looking at asset inventory and you need to make decisions off of the database or off the software version or expiry dates, Qualys is here to give you that information. With the compliance, as I mentioned, Qualys delivers control evaluations of ISO, NIST, HIPAA, loads and loads of different mandates, and can also look into certificate security such as SSL, TLS certificates as well, or internal software certification as well for expiries, which again, as Mark referred to earlier, some of the largest breaches recently have been down to obsolete software in place, obsolete operating systems. And so some of the largest organizations have been caught out from not updating their servers, for instance, on the operating systems. And that has caused huge global customer impact as well. Something that obviously Qualys helps you mitigate. Web security, a growing number of web applications are used both internally and externally for customers to access. And Qualys is able to scan uniquely through the URL and the source code of that URL. So being able to do recorded scanning through authentication pages and private member logins, etc. And also cloud security. So nowadays we're working with a blended mix of environments. As part of digital transformation, you might be migrating from purely local network into delivering some of your applications and services via AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, one of the others. Again, Qualys can handle this scan. It can give you visibility all in a central place as well. So you can look across a various number of cloud assets within a single viewpoint. And IT security as well. As mentioned briefly, Qualys delivers file integrity monitoring, indication of compromise. So where breaches happen, you're able to use Qualys to track that back to see where that came from as well. Finally, I'm just going to point to one other thing that we've spoken about here, the cloud agent. So it's, as it says there, a platform within a platform. It can be deployed free of charge throughout your network for the asset inventory. It's in Unix, Windows, Mac, Linux. So any software operating system is not an issue for it. It authenticates locally onto the assets, so it gives you immediate and full inventory against it, hardware, memory, software, ports in services, services running, for instance, any users that have been accessing those as well. There's a number of points here that I just wanted to be able to show you that IT Force in partnership with Qualys can deliver. So it may be not specific projects that you have in place, more issues that you're concerned, smaller issues that you're concerned with. And this is where Qualys should be considered. The blue boxes essentially are just referring to some of the modules that we deliver. And Qualys has over 20 applications that it can provide to you to assist with your network security and your vulnerability management specifically. The one other thing that's really useful, and IT Force are very good at being able to do this for you, is to normalize and to reclassify that information. That was step 3 of the cycle that Mark referred to there, being able to classify accurately the vulnerabilities. Discovering thousands of vulnerabilities as Qualys does, it also helps you put them into the areas of risk. So whether that would be high data loss or a public exploit is available, or the vulnerability itself is highly exploitable. Irrelevant of the severity level, whether it be a low level 1 or a critical level 5 severity, the vulnerability itself needs to be addressed in area of loss to yourself. And so this is part of the service that Qualys and IT Force delivers to you. So just to summarize what the Qualys platform will deliver, 2-second visibility across the entire global assets estate based on the cloud agent. It means that you can see everything as it's happening. Continuous assessment means that the cyclical process that we're talking about here is in place all the time. Again, via the agent or via scheduled scans using an appliance, you can structure how those reports are delivered back to you as well. And being able to identify the compromisable and the compromised assets is quite important. Being able to separate between those is the level of risk. And finally, consolidating all of that security and compliance stacks as well means that we're able to look at a single asset and look at its compliance status, its file integrity, any file hash changes that have happened, any PCI vulnerabilities that might affect your ability to take credit card payments in future as well. All of this can be seen within a single asset, a single pane of visibility. And it drastically reduces your spend. We've mentioned file integrity monitoring, indication of compromise. These are all niche point solutions that potentially you may have spent large amounts of money on, but aren't pulling the full value out of. So Qualys delivers a lower cost version of a number of these, and you should certainly speak to IT Force around the areas of, or the reviews, the annual reviews of solutions that you're looking to replace or reduce the spend on as well. Sorry, if I just pull back from here. Gents, with your permission, do I have a moment or two to share my screen, or are we short on time now?
Go for it, Patrick.
Thank you very much. Okay, this just takes a moment or two whilst I get it wrong and show you my holiday pictures. Okay, can you see my screen now, Kieran, John?
Yeah, that's spot on.
Okay, thank you very much. So very, very briefly, ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to be able to show you some of the areas or the way that IT Force will give you full visibility and normalize a lot of what is very confusing data. So we work on a number of customizable dashboards that you can create around your own SLAs and areas of risk. And very quickly, these are all interactive widgets that we've created here. So you can see trending over a period of time of your active vulnerabilities. You can see what the split of vulnerabilities are, whether they're fully authenticated, confirmed ones, or potential vulnerabilities that you need to further investigate. Encapsulating as well where the biggest areas of risk are. So it's the top 10 vulnerabilities based on your own scans and those of other Qualys customers. So highlighting the vulnerabilities that are known to be out there and looking at being exploited. And within your own network, the area of hosts or the number of hosts which need to be addressed in the short term. So this works for change control. This brings development, security, and operations into a single pane of visibility, and a single dashboard means that change control can happen far easier and more quickly. just to jump into one of these very, very quickly, I wanted to be able to show you how IT Force is going to be able to help you to prioritize and categorize. So I've just jumped into my 123 new vulnerabilities. They've all got new, as you can see listed here, and we could go into any one of these into further detail if we wanted. You can see from the sidebars here that we can actually normalize this data very, very quickly for you. I could show you everything on your Windows 10 Enterprise, for instance, or it may be that we want to be able to group these better. Maybe I want to have a look at the age of it. So my priorities are what's happened within the last 3 months or anything that's been further than that. Again, if we could go into this severity type as well, we would let's have a look at our severity 5 would be the first place I would go to. However, that's got one of the lowest amount of vulnerabilities. I actually need to concentrate on my severity level 3s. Okay, and so from this point onwards, we can go in and we can see full information around the vulnerability. We could have a look at the asset itself if we needed to as well. So all within a single click, I can look at the asset. I can have a look at any information I need to around open ports and the services that are on there, the vulnerabilities. It may even be that I want to recategorize those vulnerabilities into the threat protection RTIs, high data loss, vulnerable to DDoS, etc. And this does that for me straight away. So I can easily just go and have a look at my easy exploit vulnerabilities by tapping into this area and moving across to that as well. As you can see here, these are other modules that are provided. So based on your subscriptions with IT Force, you would be able to see further information against this asset as well. The only other thing I just wanted to show you very briefly was 2 basic reports that we deliver for senior executives. You often don't have a chance to sit down with your team for long periods of time. So just to be able to walk into a meeting and knowing what your most vulnerable hosts are at any point in time, I can see all of my vulnerabilities against those and the severity levels. Or it may be that I actually just need to say, well, I need to prioritize certain vulnerabilities. So again, as mentioned, severity level 3, mid-level in terms of risk, but actually quite a large number of detections found. So at this point in time, this is where I need to prioritize. So this is the structure that IT Force will deliver for you in partnership with Qualys. So yeah, just wanted to sort of round up by obviously thanking you again very, very much for your time this afternoon and giving me the chance to demonstrate what Qualys and IT Force can do in partnership.
Thank you very much for that, Patrick, and thank you, Mark, for your contribution earlier. Combined, that was very informative. We have a few questions before you get relaxed there, Patrick. I might want to bounce one or two of them to yourself. 2 very short ones. The first question, where do we start? There's an interesting question for you.
Where do we start? Okay, so the first place to start is with your asset overview. It's best to find out every device first of all. So maybe via a partnership with IT Force, your customers might have the cloud agent deployed or might take a network's mapping scan from you. From that point on, you can normalize the assets and create the vulnerability schedules that are required.
Thank you for that. And secondly, what does it cost? Somebody likes very short questions here.
Okay, so our subscriptions are based usually on the number of live IPs. So your customers would just need to work with you, as I said, to identify the number of assets that are live in service and need to be scanned regularly. And then you can create a subscription around that. We don't want to scan for assets that you do not use on a regular basis.
Okay, and if our Mark Skelton is still on the line there, this might be one for you, Mark. How will it affect our network performance?
Yeah, thanks. I'm just about here. Sorry, I was half asleep. I beg your pardon. Yeah, how it'll affect? Yeah, it'll crash your entire network and your entire systems will grind to a halt. No, clearly not. It's the system is designed. There is sometimes people use the words vulnerability scanning and pen testing interchangeably, but they are quite different things. Penetration testing really is quite destructive. It's coming at it from the other angle. It's like getting the sledgehammer to smash through the door. But this is not what Qualys is doing. Qualys is scanning, it's scanning manually, gently in the background. I've never heard anybody ever come to me and say, oh, our network is running a bit slow every time the Qualys scan kicks in. So I'm not saying that it has zero impact, but it certainly has no perceptible impact that people would say, no, it doesn't slow things down. It's that, you know, that's part of why we use it as a product. The last thing we want is our customers ringing us and saying, sorry, your scans are hammering my system, can you stop it? So hopefully that's an okay answer.
Okay, that's good. So there are the questions we've got. So maybe we'll just move towards wrapping this up then. Finally, I'd just like to remind you again our offer, a free vulnerability scan on your systems and a report on the back of it. Kieran will send out an email copy of this webinar to all attendees, and you'll get the opportunity to register your interest in that offer we have on that email. So if you respond to that, you'll be able to do that. So thank you to everybody for attending. Thank you again to Mark and Patrick for their contribution, and a special thank you for Kieran, who, as Mark said, is behind the curtains and he's pulling all the strings and making it all happen. So thanks to you, Kieran. That's it. So we'll just wrap it up there. Thanks again.